here. We are going to be talking about compliance, communication, gaps, and so on, continuing some of the themes, no doubt, that we've already had today. But I always have to start with a little personal question. So you're from the Netherlands, but you have been spending quite a lot of time in the Nordics and in Scandinavia recently, right?
Yeah.
Where have you been touring?
I visited Iceland with my family about 1.5 weeks ago. But actually, on my way here, you don't know that yet, but my flight got cancelled to Stockholm, the direct flight. Okay. And so they rebooked me on a flight to Copenhagen first, and then to Oslo, and then from Oslo to Stockholm.
Oh wow, you've had the
I've seen
the full tour.
As my colleague told me, I've done the Nordics tour. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're so glad you're here and you made it in one piece. So you're also the founder of Tangelo?
Yeah, whatever you want to.
No, whatever you. What do you call it?
Tangelo Software.
Tangelo Software. Thank you very much. What are you setting out to solve with that?
So it's a platform that streamlines corporate reporting. So the challenge of producing the nice looking reports in PDF or microsite, or nowadays also in the electronic format, of course, ESEF. So that challenge of not having that one person sitting behind a desktop publishing tool and doing it for you, but actually everyone that needs to contribute to the report is able to do it directly, while still applying the design automatically, actually. So yeah, it streamlines that process, takes away the desktop publishing bottleneck, and with the new formats, and I will touch on some of these new formats in my presentation, to make it all an efficient process and something you can maybe even enjoy doing.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Well, thank you so much, and over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you. All right, so this is a bit of an intimidating stage, but let's see if I can find my way around. So, yeah, we came up with this relatively long title, but what I want to talk about, ESG reporting, has been evolving over the last few years. But I do want to touch on the gap that still exists between making this a compliancy exercise and actually communicating your sustainability strategy and performance to a wide range of stakeholders. I would say that the audience is a little bit bigger than just the regulator that requires you to do this and the investor that wants to make decisions based on that, but it's actually a wider audience. So let's first look at for whom we are doing this. Sustainability reporting, or ESG reporting. It's of course the regulator, and the regulator needs this, checks your compliance with the regulation. And then the second one, the investors, and they've been mentioned a lot. They use the information for decision making. So they want to see how do we allocate our capital, make decisions around that. But the audience I want to focus mostly on in my presentation is the remaining audience, the other audiences, employees, the suppliers, but also the customers. They are really interested, besides the regulator checking the boxes and the investor making their investment decisions. This is the audience to which you need to communicate. Also communities, people living around production facilities, civil society in general, NGOs, activists, everyone. So that's the audience you need to communicate with. The regulators, they will, in the EU, receive the ESEF filing. They might run some automated checks on it, check if you are following the regulation in the right way. The investor is probably interested in, and the standardization really helps with the investors as well, of course. But they want to have numbers, so they will look for numbers. They look for that information, but communicating, and talking about having that other audience is understanding what you are doing, to make your company more sustainable and gaining that trust or keeping the trust. There's a gap there, between meeting the demands of the regulator and the investor and that other audience. So we call that the communication gap. So between compliance and communication. But also let's look at how we are producing the report. So if we look at the process of producing the report and we look at the upstream activities that are done there, it's typically a very Excel-based process, I would say, was mentioned a couple of times, and there's a risk in there, of course. But if you look at the upstream activities for eventually being able to produce the report and communicate your story. It starts with the double materiality assessment, of course, and then if we move like closer to the report, you probably need to do an analysis of what can you actually like find all this information. Are there any gaps that we have like in getting to these numbers? Followed by probably like the first system you would purchase to do this, like is to be able to calculate your carbon emissions and plan your decarbonization. So this is all happening upstream. You might like even like use a supplier portal to get information from your suppliers, either for the reporting purpose or maybe for a purchasing purpose, and collect information from the value chain as well. And then you reach the point where you are like close to like the report, collecting the data. Call it data, but it's actually disclosures, like also the narrative disclosures that you need to gather from within the organization, realizing that there are like systems that go into a lot of detail as well, but eventually these are the numbers that you, based on the standards and the narrative based on the standard, that need to go into the report that you are collecting from the organization. And you're targeting like to create an external report. But between data collection and like a very fragmented process using Excel and maybe like 1 or 2 systems in place, but you can't across the entire standard collect everything. And definitely like it's still far away from the external report. How are you going to put the data that you collected into the external report? Also realizing that the external report is not just a CSRD report or like not just a sustainability report. It's part of the larger annual report. So there we see like a second gap, like a process gap between, like, so we have the first gap between compliance and communication, and the second one is between your upstream process and publishing the report. Before we look into like how you could solve that, or what could be a good approach to deal with that, there are 2 other things that I want to mention. It's XBRL. Not sure like how many people hearing XBRL, it actually rings a bell. I can see some hands maybe, like XBRL. Just a few. Like it's the tagging that goes into the ESEF filing that listed companies in the EU need to do. So machine readable reporting and tagging the information in the report so that a computer program can like see the facts in the report. It's mandatory nowadays for financials, but it's still the plan to also make this mandatory for the ESRS disclosures in the report. So not just the narrative, but also tagging all of the numbers. The plan still is from the 2027 report, make this mandatory for ESG information. And looking at like the decision making, for example, and XBRL, like we hear a lot of people say, well, why do we need this? Like we have AI, we can just feed AI with the annual report, including the sustainability statement, and AI can get all of the facts out of the report like this. But actually, if you look at like the formats in which a report is produced, there are significant differences between the formats. Like if you may have tried like copy and pasting something from a PDF sometimes into a Word document, like you sometimes see that behavior, like it's AI actually in a traditionally processed PDF. There's a lot of problems like understanding things like a number and there's a prompt in the table. Well, does that belong together? What's the unit and what's the currency, etc. So AI cannot really well understand like a traditionally produced PDF. There is a way to make the PDF more accessible so that AI understands this better. But even a better way of making AI understand like what you're publishing is with a microsite, so a website version of the annual report. Because HTML, the underlying technology for a web page, like it's very structured, so AI understands that structure better and can more easily link numbers with meaning. But the best way, of course, is the XBRL version because the information is really tagged and AI understands it. So the combination of a microsite and XBRL is actually a very strong combination for AI. So we briefly touched on this in the introduction. So Tangelo, like we're We have a corporate reporting platform, so we've seen like 10, 15 years of experience with supporting large listed companies in producing their annual reports. So we've seen a lot, but also, of course, in the last 2 years or 1 year, no, it's 2 years already, like clients producing the sustainability statement based on the CSRD. And well, we always said, well, what's happening upstream? Well, that's that stays upstream. Like no, it's that like we don't care. Like you feed the numbers into our platform, but we did see and got the feedback from lots of clients that that process gap is real. They really struggle with getting the data they collected, the disclosures they collected, into the report, and that made us like make a decision to actually, well, help them out with that. And we have developed like a concept called Collect and Report. So with a companion product to our existing corporate reporting platform, decided to, well, seamlessly connect like the disclosures that you are collecting from within an organization based on CSRD, ESRS, or the ISSB standards, because we operate globally, and allow them to seamlessly connect that to the report. So both in like presenting it as a PDF or a microsite or in your XBRL, and for the tagging, we're actually taking the information from our data collection companion product, where we already know, like exactly know what the disclosure is or like what metric you are producing, and carrying it forward into the report. So you're also prepared for the tagging, for the electronic reporting of that. On the communication side, I wanted to like highlight this case here. It's a microsite version of a sustainability report of a client out of Hong Kong. And Stepworks is the agency that did the design for both the PDF as well as the microsite. And I think this is a very good example of like what's best in class, like communicating your sustainability story. So they have the PDF in both English as well as traditional Chinese. So, well, of course, the homepage needs to be inviting to like dig deeper into the report, strong navigation, like clear navigation. Going to like an overview where they set their targets, they describe what they're aiming for, the different goals across the different topics, and then per topic, waste in this example, like have again like an engaging way of presenting it, but at the same time also provide like the actual information, also in formats that the investor likes to use. So we'll see that like downloads to Excel are incorporated as well. So we see an engaging way of showing the results. If you go further down, like the metrics are presented in as interactive charts, but you can also switch to a table presentation. Interactive, and like in many cases, like you can even play around with the legend or select other numbers. There's even a complete chart builder in it. So you make the information like very useful for an investor, but also like that audience that I mentioned, suppliers and employees, etc. They expect information to be available on a website. Like they start looking for information in their browser, and they're not expecting a downloadable PDF, but they want to continue on the web where they started their search. So you see that can switch the graph presentation into a table presentation, and well, they also have set their targets, so you see the progress against targets. So it's very, very informational and engaging. Hong Kong, so they're on like the ISSB standards or like an early adoption of it, and moving to a more deeper adoption of it. Content indices are important parts. Like if you know the standard, you know what you're looking for, you can use the content index to get to the information. And because like you already know from the data collection part, like what the disclosure is, like these indices in a CSRD report can almost be generated automatically. The performance data, so they mix the data into their story, but also there's a performance data part of the website where you actually have more flexibility to, well, select information, present it again in table or charts presentation, and download it to a format that they can load, or as an investor can load into, well, whatever modeling tool they want to use. Yes, I think that's a good example where, like, for the communication side of the sustainability reporting, present information. So I think the bottom line is that, like, if you want sustainability reporting to work, you need to connect how you collect the information to how you communicate the information. We're hosting a roundtable at 3, I believe, later this afternoon. So yeah, come and join us if you want to discuss further on this topic. Yeah, so I'll have to meet you there or at our booth later on. Thank you.
Hey, nice to meet you.